are people who live quietly behind the glass of life, observing everything, participating in almost nothing. They stand at the edge of conversations, notice the smallest flicker in someone's tone, the brief tremor in a smile. They understand others deeply, yet remain unseen themselves. To them, visibility feels dangerous. To be looked at means to be interpreted, and interpretation has never felt safe. So they learn the art of stillness, the comfort of silence, the power of invisibility. Watching becomes their protection, their connection, their way of belonging without risking exposure. This is not shyness nor indifference. It is the quiet psychology of those who feel safer watching than being seen, people who carry both the gift of perception and the ache of distance. There are those who move through the world like soft shadows, present in every room, yet never the center of it. They notice the light shifting on the walls, the half-second pause before someone answers a question, the tremor in laughter that hides discomfort. Their attention is sharp but invisible, like air that listens. They are not absent, they are simply quiet, existing just behind the noise. For them, observing is a form of control. Watching allows distance, a way to understand without having to risk misunderstanding. In a world that can be overwhelming, their silence becomes both a refuge and a boundary. They are the witnesses of life, gathering meaning from details that others overlook. But beneath that calm exterior lies an unspoken truth. This stillness was learned. It was not chosen. Most quiet observers are not born detached. They become that way. Somewhere along the line, being noticed began to feel unsafe. Perhaps it started in a classroom where every raised hand was met with laughter, or in a family where words were easily turned against them. Maybe they learned early that attention comes with expectations, and expectations can disappoint. So they built a world where attention could be one way. They would look but never be looked at. This perspective creates a strange kind of intimacy. They know others deeply, sometimes more than they know themselves. They remember the tone of a friend's sigh, the flicker in a parent's expression, the rhythm of another's silence. To observe is to collect gestures, moods, fragments of humanity, and arrange them quietly within the mind. Yet, while they understand everyone else, they often struggle to understand their own reflection. To live as an observer is to experience connection without contact. They are part of the scene but never inside it. This distance protects them from rejection but also steals something irreplaceable, the warmth of being known. Observation becomes a shield against the risk of intimacy, yet it also becomes a cage that keeps affection at a distance. They want to be seen but not too closely, heard but not too loudly, loved but not too vulnerably. At times this state feels peaceful. Watching others express themselves can be soothing, almost meditative. There's beauty in studying the world, in finding meaning in the patterns of people. But slowly that peace turns into a quiet ache, a longing to be a part of what they're only allowed to watch. They might laugh along to a story, but their laughter echoes slightly apart from the group, as if it doesn't belong entirely. And yet, even when someone invites them closer, something inside resists. Their instincts whisper, "Stay here where it's safe." The light feels too bright, the eyes too many, the air too heavy. Visibility becomes exposure, a threat to their equilibrium. So they retreat once again, softly, politely, without anyone noticing the withdrawal. What few realize is that this retreat is not apathy. It's an act of emotional preservation. The quiet observer is constantly calculating, measuring what can be said without misunderstanding, what can be shown without rejection. Their restraint is a language of safety, born from an old memory that being seen meant being judged, or worse, being forgotten afterward. Still, somewhere in them, a question lingers. What would it feel like to exist without caution? To speak without rehearsing? To be looked at without fear? This curiosity is faint, but it's there, the seed of something that could grow. Because even as they watch life unfold before them, a small part of them is waiting for permission to step forward. In the end, the quiet observer lives between two worlds, one of distance and one of yearning. Their gift is empathy, their burden, invisibility. They understand the souls of others through observation, but their own soul remains half-hidden, waiting for a gaze that feels safe enough to meet. Every pattern begins somewhere, often long before we can name it. For those who feel safer watching than being seen, invisibility isn't a sudden choice. It's the residue of moments when visibility hurt. Somewhere in childhood, the eyes that should have understood them didn't. The room that should have felt safe didn't. And so, a quiet adaptation began. Children learn quickly where safety lives. Some find it in noise and presence. others in silence. The quiet child often starts as a sensitive one, easily startled by tone, quick to sense tension, alert to unspoken emotion. When their feelings were dismissed or misunderstood, their sensitivity turned inward. They realized that to avoid pain, they must become small, unnoticed, and self-contained. It wasn't rebellion. It was survival. Imagine a young child speaking softly in a room full of louder voices. They say something honest, maybe too honest, and the moment passes without acknowledgement. Or worse, it's met with laughter, dismissal, correction. That moment lingers. It teaches the child that exposure is dangerous. That expression leads to misunderstanding. So they begin to edit themselves. Every thought is filtered before it leaves their mouth. Every feeling is weighed for safety. Over time, the editing becomes identity. They grow into adults who feel more comfortable listening than speaking, who can mirror others' emotions perfectly but rarely share their own. Their eyes become their language, their empathy their defense. And while the world may call them calm, composed, or mysterious, what they really are is careful. Psychologists often refer to this as learned invisibility, a subconscious adaptation that arises when a child's emotional expressions are not mirrored or validated. When a parent or caregiver fails to respond with warmth, the child's developing brain associates visibility with vulnerability. The mind learns, when I'm seen, I'm not safe. So it hides, not physically but emotionally. For some, this hiding is reinforced by environments that reward silence. In certain families, obedience is praised more than authenticity. In some classrooms, introversion is mistaken for shyness rather than depth. In friendships, vulnerability can be weaponized. Each experience adds another layer of quietness, another reason to stay unseen. And yet, this invisibility doesn't erase awareness, it amplifies it. Because when one learns to disappear, their attention sharpens. They become attuned to every small shift around them. They can predict conflict before it happens, notice exhaustion behind a smile, or recognize sadness no one else names. These are the gifts of the unseen, hyper-awareness born from self-protection. But even gifts can become burdens. Over time, the observer begins to lose touch with their own emotional boundaries. They know how everyone else feels, yet they struggle to name what's happening inside themselves. They listen deeply but rarely speak freely. The silence that once protected them starts to isolate them. Beneath that stillness lives an unspoken longing, the wish to be recognized but without having to perform. To be seen for who they are, not who they appear to be. This is the paradox of invisibility, the desire to be known without the risk of exposure. As adults, these individuals might appear grounded and composed, yet they often carry an old ache, the one left behind by a childhood where safety came at the cost of expression. Their body remembers the tension of being watched too closely, their voice remembers the hesitation of being misunderstood. Every interaction still holds a faint echo of those early lessons. Stay quiet, stay safe, stay unseen. And so they live in subtle restraint, always present, rarely revealed. Their invisibility is not weakness, it's an echo of protection that worked once, long ago. But what kept them safe then now keeps them apart. The walls that shielded their inner world now blur their connection to it. The roots of invisibility are not about shyness or modesty. They are about memory, the body's way of carrying what the mind learned too early, that sometimes it's easier to disappear than to be misunderstood. To understand why some people retreat into observation, we must look beneath emotion, into the language of the brain itself. What appears as quiet detachment on the surface is often a neurobiological choreography, a mind protecting itself through stillness. When someone grows accustomed to invisibility, their nervous system learns to equate exposure with threat. The amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm center, becomes finely tuned to signs of judgment or disapproval. Even subtle social cues, a raised eyebrow, a delayed response, a crowded room, can activate this alert system. The body then releases cortisol, preparing to defend against emotional harm just as it would against physical danger. This is why for the quiet observer, being looked at can feel physically heavy, as if every eye is a spotlight they never asked for. Over time, the body begins to anticipate this tension before it even occurs. This is called anticipatory anxiety, a state in which the mind preemptively braces for rejection. So even in safe situations, small talk, group discussions, or shared laughter, the nervous system whispers, "Careful." It's not that these people dislike connection, their body simply doesn't trust it yet. From a psychological perspective, this pattern is a form of avoidant coping. It's not about apathy or arrogance, it's a learned response to chronic emotional overstimulation. When the world feels unpredictable, the brain seeks predictability within. Watching quietly provides that predictability. It's controlled through observation. Neuroscientists have found that those who tend to withdraw emotionally often show heightened activity in the mirror neuron system, the network that allows us to empathize and feel others' emotions. This means the observer isn't numb, they're hyper-attuned. They feel too much. They experience another person's embarrassment, sadness, or excitement almost as their own, making social interaction both meaningful and exhausting. It's no wonder they find comfort in silence. Their empathy itself can be overwhelming. On the psychological level, this sensitivity aligns with traits of high self-monitoring, constantly analyzing one's behavior and others' responses. The internal dialogue rarely stops. Did I say that right? Did they misinterpret me? Was that too much? The mind becomes a mirror maze, reflecting endless possibilities of misunderstanding. So the easiest path is to stay quiet, to observe rather than participate. Observation removes the risk of misstep. But while this silence feels protective, it comes at a quiet cost. Emotional withdrawal gradually teaches the brain that solitude equals safety and interaction equals danger. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional regulation, starts reinforcing avoidance patterns. If staying invisible lowers stress, the mind labels invisibility as success. Thus, safety becomes synonymous with solitude. This is where the paradox deepens. The same mechanisms that keep them safe also sustain their loneliness. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between being alone by choice and being alone by fear. It only knows that the heart rate is steady, that no one is watching, and that the world outside remains unpredictable. Yet, in the stillness, something else stirs. Awareness. Many quiet observers describe feeling split, part of them grounded in their safe detachment, another part quietly yearning to connect. This dual state is the mind's way of reminding them that safety without connection is incomplete. Research in social neuroscience calls this attachment ambivalence, the simultaneous desire for closeness and the instinct to withdraw. It's the internal tug-of-war between, I want to be known, and I must not be hurt again. And for many, this battle plays out daily in invisible ways. The text they don't send, the compliment they deflect, the conversation they almost start. From the outside it looks like shyness. Inside, it's the nervous system negotiating with memory. Emotional withdrawal, then, isn't the absence of emotion. It's emotion turned inward, condensed, and observed. It's the body trying to find peace in a world that once made exposure feel unsafe. And beneath that calm exterior, there's still motion. The slow, biological hope that one day the system might learn that being seen no longer means being in danger. Inside every quiet observer lives a gentle contradiction, the ache to be seen and the fear of it. It's a longing that never fully disappears, only softens into habit. They watch others connect with ease, speak without rehearsing, laugh without thinking how they sound, and a quiet envy flickers beneath their calm. Not envy of the people, but envy of their freedom. The freedom to exist without caution. They tell themselves they are fine in solitude, and most days they are. Solitude feels like order. It's predictable, quiet, mercifully undemanding. But there are moments, fleeting and tender, when solitude starts to echo. It hums in the corners of the mind, whispering of something missing. A voice that says, you've been watching long enough. You can step forward now. And yet, when the moment comes to be seen, a conversation that turns personal, an invitation that feels too close, the body hesitates. The heart races before a word is spoken. The mouth tightens as if remembering every time it spoke too much. The eyes avert without conscious thought. This resistance isn't weakness. It's an emotional reflex carved by years of self-preservation. Psychologically, this is known as approach avoidance conflict. The simultaneous pull toward and push away from something deeply desired. In the quiet observer, that something is intimacy. They crave it, but the cost feels uncertain. Visibility demands vulnerability, and vulnerability is where their oldest wounds live. So they hover in between. Close enough to feel connection's warmth, far enough to feel safe. It's a delicate equilibrium that few ever notice. They become the confidant, the listener, the mirror for others. Roles that let them exist near intimacy without fully entering it. They learn to express emotion through empathy, rather than through self-revelation. Others feel seen by them even as they remain unseen. But over time, this one-sided connection starts to wear thin. They begin to sense the loneliness behind their understanding, the silence behind their care. The world around them seems full of noise and belonging, yet they remain slightly apart, like an observer standing just outside the frame. They want to speak, to tell someone, I'm not as calm as I look. But the words dissolve before they reach the air. There's a quiet pain in always being the observer. You learn to find meaning in others' lives while feeling lost in your own. You become fluent in the language of empathy, yet illiterate in self-expression. You can recognize another's sadness before they name it, but when someone asks what you feel, your mind empties, not from lack of feeling but from lack of permission to show it. And yet, beneath this restraint, something keeps stirring, the human need to be known. It's small at first, appearing as curiosity, as an ache during long silences, as a tear during someone else's story that feels a little too familiar. The soul begins to whisper that maybe, to be seen is not as dangerous as it once was. Maybe the risk is part of being alive. The inner conflict grows sharper at this stage, one side longing for light, the other still clinging to shadow. It is not a war to be won, but a tension to be understood. Because for many, this conflict doesn't end with sudden transformation. It softens instead, slowly, with trust. The first time someone listens without judgment. The first time they speak and nothing bad happens. The first time they realize that being seen and being safe can coexist. In truth, every quiet observer carries this conflict not as a flaw, but as evidence of sensitivity. It is proof that they once cared deeply enough to hide, and that some part of them still hopes to return. Their silence is not emptiness, it's the waiting space between fear and belonging, between protection and surrender. There comes a moment, not dramatic, not cinematic, when the quiet observer realizes that life is passing gently by, and they are still standing behind the glass. The scenes are beautiful, the people vivid, the stories moving. Yet none of it feels entirely real anymore because it's all happening at a distance. And distance, however safe, eventually starts to ache. The first step toward being seen is rarely loud. It begins with a whisper of curiosity. What if I didn't hide this time? Perhaps it happens in a small act. Speaking a thought before perfecting it, letting a friend notice sadness without masking it, standing in the light for a little longer than feels comfortable. These moments don't look heroic from the outside, but internally they feel seismic. Because for someone who has spent a lifetime watching, even a little exposure feels like standing in the sun after years underground. Psychologically, this is the beginning of reassociation, the process by which the mind learns that what once signified danger can now mean safety. The amygdala's alarm quiets as experience replaces memory. Each time a person reveals something and survives it, a truth, a weakness, a need, the nervous system rewrites its equation. Visibility does not equal threat. Slowly, the body begins to unlearn its fear of being seen. But learning to be seen is not about performance. It's not about becoming loud, outgoing, or suddenly fearless. It's about presence, about allowing oneself to exist in front of others without editing. To say, I don't know without shame. To show uncertainty without apology. To let the gaze of another person rest upon you and resist the urge to shrink. This openness, though small, changes everything. Because being seen is not about being perfect. It's about being real. And realness carries its own kind of beauty, the kind that doesn't ask for admiration, only understanding. For the quiet observer, this transition often feels like moving from 2 dimensions into 3. Colors appear richer. Connections deepen. Conversations that once felt exhausting begin to nourish. And with that, something unexpected emerges: gratitude. Gratitude for the years spent watching, because those years cultivated empathy, perception, and patience. All the qualities that now make their visibility gentle rather than loud. To be seen after a lifetime of hiding is not a loss of safety, it's the expansion of it. Safety, they realized, was never the absence of risk. It was the presence of understanding, both from others and within themselves. Still, there will be days when retreat feels tempting. When the old instinct whispers, it's easier not to be noticed. And that's okay. Healing does not erase the need for solitude, it simply transforms it. Solitude becomes choice, not escape. Silence becomes peace, not fear. Watching becomes appreciation, not avoidance. In this new balance, the observer doesn't stop observing, they just step into the frame while doing it. They begin to understand that connection and safety are not opposites. They are threads of the same fabric, woven through trust. And as they continue to live with awareness, they start to notice something profound. The world is not as harsh as they remembered. Eyes that once felt intrusive now hold warmth. Attention that once felt dangerous now feels like presence. The act of being seen becomes an act of being met, not judged but understood. In the end, learning to be seen is not a single transformation but a quiet unfolding. It's the gradual return of the self to the world. It's realizing that their sensitivity was never a flaw, only a form of depth. The quiet observer steps out from behind the glass, not to demand attention but to share it. They still notice, still listen, still see, but now they let themselves be part of what they witness. And in that gentle exposure, something shifts. The world doesn't become safer, they do. Because finally they understand, being seen is not the opposite of safety. It's the beginning of belonging.